We're talking about critical big modeling of electrocatalysis beyond the potential zero charge. So we're going to turn the template and recess. Hey, good morning. Good to see so many brilliant. One question we've done now before. Last stuff. Thanks very much for the invitation for the info. What I'd like to discuss today is the general methodological challenges that we have in this field of electrochemistry, and maybe then a little bit the contributions that our lists will to make these kinds of challenges or overcome. People frequently say, and I hear it, I used to always say that the trails the remaining substances by 20 years. Why is that? This is something that phase in electrocatalysis, all the problems and challenges that we have in the modeling of solid gas, electrocatalysis, plus additional challenges. This then makes it super complicated for us. And what are, so to speak, the key pillars that we have to get right in our kind of modeling? And here, I mean, the problem is that, of course, that's a no-brainer. It's catalysis and real simple be able to describe the active chemistry that forces us at the end of the notes, first principles, kind of methods, and that's sort of like right. Typically, we have to also work with very boundary condition supercells because of the metallic electrodes, metallic slabs, in order to get the band structure of these systems right. We somehow need these very boundary conditions, and that's in work in these kind of like supercells. That's what's so in the thermal analysis area, because unfortunately, putting together first principles means to see just no wrong as funding theory, fund damage to yourself to be equals expensive, and that begins us. The complexity that we have a solid liquid in the that we have long range statics that we don't have. Because since we're identifying the things here, what we have is in the image line, we have this buildup of layer, which is quickly separated somehow conceptually into the inner or helmholtz kind of like layer, also potential drop happens. But then in the bottom of this diffuse double layer that takes care of the square so my response is by reorientation on its polar solvent of its own molecules plus the ions that we have in there to compensate for this kind of charge. And only if we take the inner forward together with the same amount of charge as we have on the electron side, and then we basically are to neutral. And unfortunately, everything is fluid down here slips quite strongly away from the surface. Not charge because it makes our cells that we need to support even larger or to really get mission into it. And on top of this, of course, then when we don't have just a simple gas like we have in thermal catalysis here, which is on catalysis, we can very easily also possibly by either gases. Now we have we have somehow also account for all the solvent dynamics. In this segment, if it is a similar things, this is what we have in thermal catalysis. This is what we have on top of catalysis. When you understand why I think it's principles starting on straight catalysis are only a very, very key. And today I would like to discuss two sort of like methodological branches that have emerged over the last couple of years. Our group has been involved somehow in tackling these challenges. And first part of it discuss the use of implicit solution models, which is a very long standing illegal more stuff that now has so many experience that are results in this context of electrocatalysis and how we can use it to somehow get capacity charging into our models. The physics of really polarization of potential capacity. In the second part of the talk, I'd like to discuss how machine learning is learning models, particularly then limitations of using implicit solutions to continue on in really now being able to efficiently provide explicit solutions. We can start with the implicit solution and come back to this problem huge extent of the diffuse double layer that we have and cannot find solidly great interface. And that's incompatible with the two supersets so that you can somehow directly improvements in the functional field. So then the point is, of course, if we really only would maybe this part of it itself in itself is not charge neutral because there's still this rest part in the diffuse double layer that we would need in order to get the full charge neutrality of the system. And how do you deal with it? When it's doing this, to say, yeah, in fact, it fits the example which is a very well established approach. And some of the times is why we just do it also in electrocatalysis. And what is that issue of naming some Uschi Graham found? If I can't full cell here, full system here, why don't I just basically group the finite part of the system that I can model? And then I'm using external reservoirs, the ground canonical scheme, and basically in this, we assume predictive reservoirs will be part of the system that we explicitly know, and then somehow then allows me to deal with the river system. That was chart in some of the studies because human reservoirs are natural species. They're typically our gas phase species that we have around. Problem is that here are more reservoirs that we can set up. I think the reservoirs with nitrogens and reservoirs with ions. And these are target cases. If I would do a free graph flow the way of course I could have an ungained number of elements and ions. Somehow I ING explicitly or that I try to put into the reservoirs, which means that in principle this finite part of the simulation cell that I'm simulating wouldn't be charged. I would need to simulate it as a charged entity. But that brings me in trouble with this necessity that I mentioned that we have to do everything in very bounded conditions. Because if you want to charge percent in very bounded conditions, it's years. It's to be for catastrophe, and BFD could simply renormalize the problem for us. So, what should we do about it? The simplest way of dealing with this problem is to basically ignore it. And then it's called computational hydrogen. And I'm starting phrasing this very back, and it's not right to say it like this, because the approach against the was myself too at the time they introduced the approach was completely different. One was ingenious one. So they would have, which computational hydrogen. So it was if I have these kind of equations where I need my chemical potentials for these external reservoirs, separately getting chemical potentials for the ions as well as for the electrons, it seems like a nuisance. Instead, it's real is that if I have them in certain magic pairs like this, these are the things basically are the finite equation for the definition of the reverse. But then I'm only to complement these states somehow to solve these kind of equations, but it is basically can reference the thing, my applied potential with respect to the reverse. And I have them elegantly solved together. It's the angle that they come from, and that's an ingenious one, makes everything super simple. The problem is that what it implies doing that is that, of course, I can always each time only remove and edit them together because I have only this magic pair of these chemical potentials that I can relate to the reverse potential. And this means, for example, that whenever I want to remove a proton from the finite part of the system that I'm modeling, I also have to remove the electron. And this basically then forces me to, for example, only be able to deal with proton from electron transfer steps. And means is that this Q here, so my finite system here, that Q stays always completely charged neutral. So it's a very awkward approximation if you then realize this from the context of free charging your surface, because in principle, of course, because we use the ground canonical schema, similar, we have a very simple means of introducing potential dependence to our DLT kind of calculations. But the actual system that we calculate always remains a potential zero charge because we don't charge it up at all. So the electronic structure of my system always has a potential zero charge. It's really external potentials that vary according to the applied potential of the pH that I have. This means that, of course, with my surface, not exactly for charging it up, obviously it's charge neutral. There is never a dynamic layer. Therefore, for example, spatial effects are pretty ridiculously small because there is no double here, potential zero charge. And And they then my surface. And it means that the entire physics of the capacity charging that I also have in catalysis is not in my mind. That's of course a problem. And the reason why implicit solution models to my feeling have experience during systemic implicit solution models allow a very rich gateway become the and why is that? Because these implicit solution models allow to introduce in a very simple way counter charts in the eventuality into my system. Okay? This is solution. But the molecular something like modeling there, basically every packet you describe your electrolytes continuum. But of course, you would also try to do it with electrolyte with somehow classical ions for distributions. Is there anything how one do it? I don't want to go into this today. I think what it just means is that we can put this in a meaningful way that can be our electron. Then what I can do is that I can recharge up my stuff. Again, the counter charges are basically provided by the implicit selection model. My entire finite system that I'm computing is charged with control, so I can do it very efficiently. But now my service can be charged. I can very efficiently do charge simulations. This then allows me to vary my electron and my proton numbers independently from each other. This is why the approach really was developed by Nico Hermann. Say, indeed, see that this is why they call it fully grand canonical. Because before, the computation actually electrons also can be grand canonical, but only always in pairs of protons and charges. Now, you can basically in the families are quite efficient, only communicating conditions. And thread and so like a very simple kind of including tools my around speed shifters. But what I would really like to discuss today is on for towards the improvement. And if we take a very, very simple example in system here, yes, sure, thank you, like CO on a plastic. It is a neutral adsorbate. So it's now neither photons nor charges into it. Combination electron firstly with minus energy is potentially independent. Because it would only vary when it's potentials, since the CO is also doesn't depend on that. It's a constant, and here we take it simply as our zero. In contrast, as expected, if I fully grant, I get potential dependence such, which is basically the capacity to kind of repeats since all this is variant because what you basically get is a dipole field kind of picture. If you so potentials that are supplied in large zero charge, you should get stronger binding because the dipole of your CO lines like little field created at the neutral and basically a positive effect like whereas on the other side you have negative effect. And if you make a verse, the envelope calculation, you also see that the order of magnitude fits. One of the routines of the order of volts. Dimensions are roughly angstrom atomic, and so we have fields of the order of volt per angstrom. Molecular dipole of CO is 1.1 divided, and you should get very good suggestion you should get variation of the order of 10 million per volt. Well, yes, something like that, about 5 times more. So this seems to be in order, or we simply now capture seems to be dipole field kind of. Now, if this is so, we thought fields should be particularly strong at protruding sites at the surface. We know this all from the mesoscale antennas. We use it, for example, for enhanced spectroscopies, etc., where you can simply create high fields. And in catalysis, we are typically very often worried about like a step in kind of atoms because of the specific chemistry that they have. But in a sense, if you think of the vicinal surface, they are also protruding entities. And of course, then you would expect, this is where I get most of my charge concentrated in larger fields. So maybe I get largest dipole field kind of effect, the strongest variation of my energies with potential. And that would make these sites even more special than they are anyways. And so we went to test this, we went to a couple of vicinals, platinum 111, and this is basically a representation of the charge that we have on the surface. And if we don't get it, like the more relative charge we get to a terrace than you have, see that the edge and the key atoms are sort of like much darker. There's much more charge connected to these as you would expect when you charge your standard physics and protruding. Now, you calculate the potential dependence again of my CO molecule, its absorption energy at these various sites. And well, we expect the strongest like field kind of effects, the kings and then the medium edges is 3,000 around. So at the edge is very smaller than stress in the king, you essentially get a global potential left. So where's my physics? What is wrong here? Well, the reason that this is significant in that field kind of picture, because if you just look at each shape surface, yes, it needs most of the charge, so like resides the virtually right. But when CO, that charge is no longer in the surface medium. It basically goes into your Z wing because now the CO is sticking out as the antenna, and of course that's where most of the charges simply go. And therefore, the idea that is basically you have a dipole with CO sitting in here and then stimulating the field is wrong because the part actually goes into the kin. So that's wrong. Since you want to see a picture that you have a surface dipole of your CO, and since then the change is more homogeneous, you could very clearly see basically a big capacitor kind of thing is called homogeneous. And then if you put this in a very small grades out and what change of homogeneous would expect, and the thing only requires doing the work function potential for charge, which is something that you get in the computationalizing power. And if you see what this approximation is, you more or less cover what you're reading these fully wrapped up calculations. And so there's a perfect understanding of these things in here. And what we learn is that the variations of our absorption energies, they're not predictable from the molecular side, anything nice, protruding scientific, particularly strong or something like that. Neither of them was like effectively, so you have to explicitly choose it. But if we then can, for different species, we actually see that these variations in the results they are actually quite sensitive. It's something that we should now keep in mind that the largest majority of published reaction paths that we have in catalysis at the moment, they're all done with a type electrode, which ignores such kind of variations of the absorption. So there's now a opportunity to revisit many of these studies and include an efficient way of these kinds of. And this here basically then is work where Philip Luczynski will give the talk after me. This is also, it's of course also what is very called chemical steps, where you see all this often essentially doing separately. If you, for example, move to ORR, and we're going to any details here, basically the first way is how you get the oxygen. The surface is a chemical step. There's no proton exchange, there's no charge exchange nominally in it, which is why very often in these reaction diagrams that we see published, this initial step is not even included somehow. And you basically, to then, again, with the concrete hydrogen, the absorbed energy of O2 at the surface is potentially independent. If you do very simple, this is sort of you get potential dependence and inside of it. And unfortunately, one doesn't see the particularly destroying the whole rock of stars. So it's roughly around sort of like a objectively. This is something that we should avoid. Because this is already physical here. We're representing a complex spectral line. Initially, that you have complex solvent dynamics and all of this. We're modeling this is a good thing. As good as can possibly be, as well as the parameterizations that you have for most of the implicit selection models are typically all parameterizations that we have from molecules. Now we're using this for transition mechanics. So we should very carefully assess when we sort of like and then we sort of like with respect to the experimental stuff. This is why we force Alex to do very expensive molecular things where now we explicitly really do the electrolyte. This is expensive as hell. And these sorts of things. This is why it still like have strong scatter there. But you see, I think overall we're not doing too bad. If you're looking closer at the application of molecular dynamics, data analysis, basically we're talking about it. Because there are like two kinds of regimes in here that if we analyze them also make a lot of sense. It's basically we get a change in the hydrogen bonding. And that sort of like gives a change to this.
And obviously, this is something that is an implicit model we can never calculate. It's a continuum. So no hydrogen bond in there. And the lesson that we can focus is that implicit solvation models that is fully ratified with simulations, they allow us one step beyond the computation hydrogen without actually any increase in computational cost. So better than that. It's definitely not the end of the story because, for example, we're missing the we have to include important physics of capacitive charging, but we don't include hydrogen bonding yet. And this means that in the end of the day, we will have to go to explicit simulation. And I'm confused with time because that clock tells me that I have no time left. Is that true?
20 more minutes. 20 more minutes.
20 more minutes. Like as long as we need you wrong. Okay, I could have spoken a little bit slow. Second part of it. Sure, the first talk is we made a clear advance, but we need explicit models. But if we always do everything with a initial molecular dynamic, we're basically doomed. It's a CPU killer. And it's just way too expensive. What can we do here? And this typical answer these days to basically everything is machine learning. So, of course, yeah, it's data kind of stuff. And in particular, what has proven to be very useful, seems to be very useful, is an approach where we use machine learning to basically get surrogate models. For those people that do not yet know what surrogate models are, that we briefly introduce them, or we know anyway. One of the simulations we try to solve physical models. What is in the physical model for? We have to existing parameters that we need as an input to our model methods. Like there's, for example, the positions of the atoms. And we put this into a code that we read that's physical. For example, let's use the Schrödinger equation. I've deliberately drawn this as a black box. So you don't necessarily need to know what is done, whether it's the Schrödinger equation that's solved in this physical model or not. At the end of the day, you get somehow as output the system quantities that you're interested. This is using basically physical models. The surrogate model recognizes that, well, if I'm doing something, maybe not for the first time, but I actually do Electrocatalysis on the standard 10 services that we're always interested in, similar kind of techniques before. So it's not completely unknown territory, so we cannot maybe reverse these previous calculations that I've done. So the surrogate model it's exactly the same as a physical model, but it doesn't really solve the physical model itself anymore. By evaluate the similarity of these parameters to the ones that I already have to learn secure data and includes kind of interpolation. The everything was machine learning interpolation, sexy word for it. And then you get the same kind of stuff out. If you explain on this super important information about what's using when we stats, it's very small when people nowadays play around. First thing is, in the best of all worlds, what a surrogate model can be is as good as the physical model. So if I use here DFT data, my machine learning will not give me anything better than DFT level quality. How it's basically just using simulations to create a perfect world that just does that. So there is no miracles to expect from the machine. It's basically something that gives me the same stuff that I've gotten from the DFT calculation, for example, before, just faster. And that's another aspect of surrogate models. The only reason why I would use a surrogate is because I want things to be faster. If at the end of the day, my machine learning model here and the generation of this database takes me more time, it's more expensive than doing a direct DFT calculation. It's sexy to do a machine learning surrogate model and I can publish it, but it's largely useless. So, two important messages about this entire field. Good. So, how do we do it? In what in particular to become cost effective? And here one has to think of about how we are evolving. Actually, because machine learning is a data science. And so we have flow the data central approach, this approach and follow an answer. I somehow have a data small, larger, or anything I have. Based on that data, I now train some sort of like a machine learning model, instead of the model. And then hopefully that model gives me some science out, but I don't know which that we give out with it, because that depends on the initial data. I don't, well, for example, that we found being interested in whether we reach the data. It's actually great to answer these kinds of questions in there. And what I could do, one way to do it is that's the local way, is to just advance loads of data so they can fully have access to everything. That's super expensive. That's one can do it. It's super expensive. So like you work with social media data, then it's easy to gather. You know, it's very expensive because we need, for example, for principles calculations. One can do it. That's one way. It's just not very, because you probably would need community efforts in a long time to do it. And then, so like in my what we prefer to we try to start the way from our question something. We didn't start with a problem. Not with, oh, there's a wooden toy that's playing. So first we come up with a scientific question, and then the scientific question should tell me kind of you need. And then develop dynamic the database that I need specifically to answer that question. We call this approach a science-driven approach. And the answer how you're doing is basically active learning. So you start when you start to develop models, you compare the science that you want to ask, and in the ideal world, the model that might self-filter what the data is. And this way sort of like you mingle the creation of data and the usage of your model for your scientific questions. It's not separated that you once have a training stage and then find it as a start. And then you do your evaluations. You sort of like intertwine the two sorts of things because your model constantly tells you, oh, I'm not super happy here and I don't interpolate reliably. I need more data. But then also all the cool things that the model has found out. It typically either knows that it has reliable data for it or it queries it. And so at the end of the day, whatever prediction you make, it's directly DFT-based inquiries because it has really specific data. And that, of course, increases very much the reliability of your model. Now, let me just give you one example from this area of surrogate models. You can also do very many discrete surrogate models, for example, that give us only certain points of the potential surface area. So today I'd like to discuss full sort of like potential energy surface models, like they would be essentially the same as force fields. Surrogate models of square impulse machines are in force fields these days. Because, as I said, my original motivations, I want to do explicit water simulation, specific electrolyte simulations. I want to run molecular dynamics simulations. So I need the continuous potential energy surface, all parts of it, and then for sort of like this machine learning interactive applications are most useful. I'm not going into too many details of it. Again, the concept is very simple. You basically have to start with a database that you can iteratively and from the data survey, you know the potential stability, you can create some sort of a representation of the local environment around the net. And based on the similarities of these atomic environments, the ones that in the calculation that we want, it basically it learns to speak or does a regression of your potential entities. And there are network-based, and typically would be associated with the name of your data. These are magnetic coordinates. You can do it also with regression configuration potential world is the Gabo Johnny kind of like work. In the meanwhile, there are other which potential of force fields. Say new ones being developed, such as all the time. They all vary. So force field varies. They more of you following the same. But the important part is metrics they evaluate, they typically make the decision because they approximate to my system as a simple sum of contributions from everything that runs the system by evaluating the local environment around it. That makes these things efficient. It's decomposition. Now, here are now switching to that something different thing there. It's first of all discuss electrocatalysis. I want to do explicit simulations, but we don't have these simulations yet, so this is why I have to bear in this meeting. And at the moment now I'm going for quite a bit to look at this in the concept of the problem of working interfaces, granular structural evolution. We want to, for example, learn what happens to the beta synthesis And here, as I said, follows sort of like this idea of active learning. We start with a very small database that then we use to develop the first, let's say, as a platform. Of course, it has very different data, but it might we can use, for example, way for the optimization or structure, for example, mainly dealing, and eventually, because we need that very long time, we see that we can finally serve this kind of structure. And we do this not only for one service or one termination, we do it for many. And always we evaluate the similarity. It goes back to zero, we basically common regional surface, structural work, or if it becomes larger, we find new structures. And then from all the new structures that we make, we basically pick out the ones that are farthest away from the known database, the data points that we already have, so that they bring the maximum new information on the thing. And we query those and compute them in first principles. Then we go on in mind around until the converge. And then when it converges, very principles. This we found, for example, for one side completely it's basically a flipping of the topmost two layers. Side. It's very simple, but nobody apparently had it means all those things because you increase them by nature of your topmost level. And they so stable that if you then use make one constructions, you see that grow already moves to grow conditions. It's absolutely dominant, but and this is completely because everybody in Newton, of course, would say 110 surfaces, but it's actually 101. And coincidentally, it happened that targets in people in Vienna had just the same time they had grown credits under it's actually these kind of conditions. They lead a conference where I gave this talk for one of the first ones we were not sure about because who the hell talks about 101? In here, they will make you scratch. It's going to kill me. So then directly comment what you mentioned talk because we suddenly grow all these crystals and they will show 101. We don't understand why. Then they unleash their standard surface science machinery, the SDM, XPS. Long story short, every data that they have is fully compatible with this new analytical niche that we found. So that's good news. They seem to have like say another for surface solution, we can also do it for surface. Geometry is just extremely old. And here we wanted to have better optimizations for the software stations. They expand because teams, right? You have not only monolithic absorption, but it can be validated positions on the surface. Very difficult to try out DFT, and so we wanted to directly go and optimize it. And the potential that we set up is basically on one single DFT is physically completely stupid. Of course, what it means is it directly places atoms into each other and not. But then that's exactly the kind of data that it needs to learn most. And you see very few iterations, the errors go down very quickly, and then these like proposed absorption geometries are really basically very good in full agreement with explicitly. Paradise is super cheap. Independent walkers trying out like these sorts of things here. Independent walkers all trying out different surface absorption geometries for these we find potential. Keep them alive, kill them based on the diversity, how diverse they are to other walkers. One structure, certain structures that are similar to another, we kill that one because it doesn't contribute new ideas and we spawn so it's like a geometry that is significantly different. Where you very quickly then can recover, for example, all the syngas intermediates on rhodium catalysts that before have like with that. And funny enough is that you really find many structures that are significantly more stable. So old structures, the structural models that were published are really wrong by more than 100 kJ or more. Of course, means we definitely have to go back and revisit these old machine was published because they have mentioned it's in that's wrong by 100 kJ or more because it was not the right geometry that was found. Okay. Is that the solution to it? Is it just surrogate models? It's also much faster, and now we can for example, do electrocatalysis and would be able to put it explicitly to light because we have established a surrogate. Unfortunately, not. And the reason is that the local environments. And what this implies that again is that we are not locally sustainable short range potentials in describing fields. Again, scribbled on data for systems. Now you have to follow me to battery country. For instance, for example, the state electrolyte, which was here, solid beautiful electrolyte. And here, so like you have so like screw electric field, and we want to compute formations of defects in here to get an understanding these interface. And of course, these defect formation, these just as much as the absorption discussed in the beginning, they should be potential dependent or field dependent. And then we train simulate model just exactly as I showed you before, the same kind of concept. Everything looks great. If you compute the defect formation energy, zero field dependency. Why? Because the field is a long range property. If we base our energetics just beyond the short range environments, right? We cannot capture it. And that's something that has basically now kept our entire community very, very busy with it. So at the moment, everybody who develops machine learning surrogate models, machine learning fields, tries to somehow get the long range electrostatics in space. There are different ways of how one can do it. You realize it's working. But we are also having the work on just to show you that this is really needed. The simplest one can do is one can basically put formal charges on the different kind of like ions that are in the electrolyte, which is of course wrong because they are not the formal charges. So that part of the part is not to get the idea. If you then make long range studies, add that on top of the short range machine learning, then of course you get that images. So they show this in different in correlation on this, which implies that the different grains, for example, the electrolyte so like become unstable depending on the relative orientation to the electron. Which is something that they start to see in electron microscopy. This is something that needs to be refined now. That one really sort of like the short range machine learning potentials with a model for the long range electrostatics. And it's typically a physical model again, because in the end, long range electrostatics, we roughly understand. We know the equations. Why should we learn this somehow? But we have to learn, of course, the partial charges that are evaluated from sums. And there are different ways of how one can do it. In the latest revisions of most of these machine learning force fields now start to get this insight. But for example, in the latest revision from Veda, also fifth generation, I don't know how many numbers and more, they don't have self-consistency. So with these, you can never need to electrocatalysis. That's inside, but not the proper one with the ingredient. So they still with theological stuff. With this, and this is a long summary in video. What I more or less wanted to show with this modeling extended solid-liquid interfaces is really difficult. It's much more difficult in thermal solid gas kind of interfaces because of the long range statics that we have, because of the solid dynamics that we take into account. These implicit solidation approaches, they provide a very simple way of going beyond computation. If you control with this fully graphite approaches, then it's still super cheap. It's about as cheap as a computation mentioned. And what we can get is the physics of capacitive into our models. But of course, what we cannot get inside the physics solvation models, of course, any so like real localized effects like hydrogen bonding networks and all these sorts of things. That's completely out of models. Therefore, in the end, we probably will have to go to fully explicit models. They're very expensive, and I think at the moment one thing that is very promising to go is learning force fields for it. But again, careful. At the moment, they don't have typically long-range electrostatics instead, and that means that they cannot directly be used to really electrify the interface and region and chances being tension of zero charge. There's still stuff to do. And I think we have made quite some progress as a community. We're not going forward quite exciting years. But that's what we stopped without finishing, of course, the people who didn't work. I highlighted the individual members of my group in science. This is the department which we now are. I'm very thankful to them because in the end they are the ones that do the work and they drive everything with their enthusiasm. And including my members from here, I thank you for it.
We have time for a few minutes of questions. It's a big room, so we have a mic I just get off. So if you have a question,
During this talk, so that you still back up, then the interaction was still fine. The environment still not and one. So because different so and more rather at certain conditions. So if you calculate the fuel back for differential fuel energy at a certain coverage, the effect will be smaller and for you show data.
I think it also to answer this in generalities. You're perfectly right. You want to win right, you motivate your core to do big anything hard, just you can overlap your tracks. But you also have to do the potential behind it. When we are going to dial, so we have another when use low coverage and some frequencies, and then use this for our reaction networks and the microflame models that we set up. And if you want to revise, this is not what it's thinking. It's not like really wouldn't points or fluctuations or coverage. It's after they have to be both inside the model. And seeing cases where the potential dependence is large, the electrification are smaller. But I've seen cases also where the electrical interactions are stronger and the potential dependence is smaller. And or so if your electrical interactions, because for example their reduction change your diet when you lost against, you get of course a different potential dependence and different properties. So you can work with once from potential make a model for that for the potential dependence, and then once include lateral interactions and make a model for this separately. These two things are correlated with each other because they all to tweak the environment over a serious line. So in principle, we have to really include the four dependence of the two things in your models. Right? You might not see it for the simple reactions, where we typically do our microflame models, but if you really want to go into selectivity and predict selectivity, this is the stuff that we have to get right.
other questions?
Thanks for the great talk. For the last point, the fully explicit and soft model, I was wondering that you mentioned that individual maybe one of the choice, but for this individual dynamics is still neutral. Right?
There are also ways of how you can include countercharges into a initial molecular dynamics. So it's really ways that we don't get the counter and so where you're not required and we don't know. For example, so basically solid solution is a solution model where you somehow include and only includes your spray ratios. But what you should make a finite region of explicit electrolyte, and then you have a stronger electron here. And what they're our do is they put here a neon layer, which is inert. But then this can be charged in this way, then you really, so to speak, create an electric field between your slab, your electrode, and this counter. So you can do it average to like that. It's just large because then behind this counter charge, you can have a vacuum region, you want to have a dipole fraction, so that you, because in the end, you want to vary it in the see it's not really. And so these cells are large, you do them, for example, with standard plane wave codes, they give you their cost because you have to fill all the vacuums, especially with plane waves. And so this is a very efficient way of doing it. But the moment I think existing approaches is usually are based on baskets. Most trivial to implement. But these things exist and one can largely improve them. There are several models we also working on them. If I Wippermann has now a intensive thermostat model, which is
control the potential, you have to basically build the thermal energy and potential energy, which to potential state, you basically freeze your system eventually, because no somehow it is here. The energy that you take out from the potential state cannot be converted as the thermal stuff again to be used like in the right capabilities. So there's a couple of things working on that. So it can be done. It's just ensuring the main circumstances. Here's the already models if it can work. Common predictive studies can give us the typical 3-4 orders of magnitude. These things here. It's 3-4 orders of magnitude. So you can do a longer sampling, more trajectories, these sort of things.
So I think we have time for one quick question.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it was a really interesting talk. I had a question. Is there some sort of difference in the chemical specificity of the physical models versus the surrogate models? So, for example, is the surrogate model less sensitive to the specific chemical environment with specific molecules participating in the reaction, whereas the physical models might be more specific if there's some sort of trade-off there where the surrogate model could potentially be more reliable than the single DNT model?
In the end, the zero order answer is no, because the surrogate model can always only reveal the DFT data that you train on. That said, there are certain ways at the moment of how one, for example, does chemistry into it, so that we basically learn changes across sequence in a very efficient way. And this will reduce the number of DFT data points for instance, that you need to be able to extrapolate across species. That's an active area of development at the moment. Tom Hitch is sitting 2 rows behind him. He has a good overview over these sorts of things. You might not want to ask him in the break whether he's super happy with one of the current ones. When I said not so much yet, but it's extremely cool because he's put a new computer screen, right? So what computers now. So